Good. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Rebecca. I'm Stephanie Mann at safekidsnow.com, and I am so pleased to have with me today Rebecca Kimbel. And Rebecca is a former member of the Fundamentalist of Latter-day Saints Church, which is basically a cult. And she's going to tell you a lot about the cult. And we're going to start off by talking about how many churches there are and about the money, because the Latter-day Saints. So, Rebecca, please share with us some information about your church, and we're going to also hear about why you left and what has changed in your life. So tell us about the wealth of the church.
Okay, before I tell you about the wealth of the church, I need to give you a little bit of basics about the covenants and commandments in the church in its very, very beginning. Now, whether you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or whether you're the member of a fundamentalist Mormon cult that broke away from the church, you're still influenced by those oaths and covenants that you made, because they all started on the same basic oaths and covenants. So when the fundamentalist polygamist groups broke away from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they took the basic teachings, including these covenants, with them, and they never let go of them. As the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints went on through the years, they softened their covenants up a bit. When I say softened them, they didn't get rid of them. They softened them up a bit to be less traumatic.
So you had the basic Church of Latter-day Saints, and then was this a group that broke off from the original church and kept the same information, or how did that work?
What happened is that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints started with a basic premises, and it continued that way for a few years. However, when the law started coming up against them and telling them they couldn't have polygamy and things like that, there were those that wouldn't let go of the basic commandments of the church, and they broke away, and all those polygamists that broke away are called Fundamentalist Mormon polygamists, or Fundamentalist Mormons, FLDS, because they stuck by the fundamentals. However, way back in the days when the church was first founded, and Joseph Smith started the church, he got into considerable amount of trouble with the law along the way. A lot of people aren't aware of it, but Joseph Smith, the founder of the church.
Sorry, I got a cough.
Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was actually killed in a robbery. Nobody talks about that much anymore. What happened is, back then, when Joseph and his brother Hiram were killed, and Brigham Young and all the pioneers set out on their long wagon treks to set out for Salt Lake City to start the new kingdom.
Okay, tell us the date. When was this? When did this happen?
This is in 1827. All of the saints came out to Salt Lake Valley and started their new colony. They made covenants and oaths to God. And the covenants and oaths they made to God were because of the murder of Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram. And they made a solemn vow to swear to keep this oath as long as they lived. And the vow that they made was that they were to hold the United States government responsible for the sacrifice of those two men. The United States government had to pay constantly for the sacrifice of those two men. And unless you understand that, you're not going to understand the money trail. It was a basic indoctrination in Mormonism. And you had to swear on it with your life that you would keep your covenants to Mormonism or suffer what was commonly called blood atonement, which means your death.
Okay, and that still goes on today?
That still goes on in all of the fundamentalist polygamous cults. The oath has been softened a little by the Mormon Church. It was softened again this year when the Mormon Church decided that they were going to make polygamy no longer illegal, but just a misdemeanor. So they softened it again to make it easier for them to do whatever they wanted to do. But the old covenants actually make a person swear upon the penalty of having their bowels torn from their body and burnt with ashes, and their breasts torn from their body and parts of their body.
Well, now that doesn't happen today, right?
No, this is part of the oath.
Okay.
So the oath is really quite traumatic, but the oath was only taken in secrecy inside of the temple for everybody to keep the temple secrets quiet. And this oath had to be kept secret because it was an oath against the United States to swear, to force the people to take vengeance, literally, upon the people of the United States for the death of the prophets. And that was part of the basic oath.
How does that work?
We polygamist children grew up with it. We grew up with the oath, not only this oath, but we grew up with being told that if we did not obey the priesthood, all the men had the priesthood, not the women, that if we did not obey the priesthood, we would have to pay with our lives. So we grew up with this oath twisted to keep us in order. All of us did. We grew up with our lives being threatened for disobedience. It's really important that you remember this, because as we progress through this little talk, you'll say to yourself over and over, why do they tolerate it? This is why. The oath is why. Try to remember that the oath is why. The oath is recited to them, and they swear to uphold it or suffer blood atonement, which is your death. So you're swearing against your life to uphold the secrets and what you were told to do by the priesthood.
And when did you first realize that that was something that you had to obey?
It was that common in our family.
Okay.
I don't remember a beginning of it.
So how does the wealth accumulate in the polygamist church?
Well, we have to start first in order to keep this not too complicated. Let's start first with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because even though they don't rule fundamentalist churches, you need to understand their wealth and their position in order to understand what goes on as we move forward, okay? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 2018, so these statistics are a little bit old, okay, had 16 million members, had temples worldwide, 65,000 full-time volunteer missionaries, and was declared the 4th largest Christian church in the United States of America.
Oh, it's a mighty big church.
It's a mighty big church. It's a mighty wealthy church. It is, if you look up wealthy churches, you will find it listed on the most.
Okay, well, how do they accumulate their wealth?
Well, everybody pays 10% of their tithing. So they've got the tithing. And also, you know, I've got relatives that belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that go and donate their time during harvest time and work in the fields and drive tractors and donate their time to God. Now, you need to understand about donations so there's no confusion. Donations to God are fine if they are donations and you do them voluntarily and you're not getting paid for them. That's legitimate. If you're told you have to or else, that is illegal. There's two, so the later will come up here in the FLDS. It's the other way around, all right?
Okay.
So now we look at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its wealth. And now we're going to look at a fundamentalist polygamist called the Kingston Group. And the Kingston Group has property in about 4 or 5 states, but they also have a lot of property, most of their property in Utah. But the Kingston Group is very, very famous and been in the news a lot, so they'll probably ring a lot of bells. So we'll get into the Kingston Group and how the money stands there. The Kingston Group had a big biofeed company called Washakie, and Jacob Kingston ran that company. February 12, 2020, Jacob Kingston was in trouble. One of his relatives testified against him that he had basically stolen $30 million out of that Washakie company.
Wow.
It was fraudulent money. On March 19th, 2020, another news report came out, but now the price that was stolen is $47 million. Okay, then www.St. George News in Utah followed that up with $500 million was now stolen from the Washabee Company. It was a biofuel company, and they were transporting fuel back and forth and making their books pay them when the fuel didn't come. It was all fraudulent. Then in Fox News, Fox 13 confirmed the $500 million theft. Then California businessmen came out with, no, it had gone up to $511 billion theft. Then the Courthouse News came out with $134 million theft. It was the largest fraudulent theft in the history of Utah.
Well, let me ask you, were there any consequences for this, or how did they discover this, and what happened as a result of finding out that
I don't know
money were stolen?
exactly how they got caught, but a couple of relatives testified against each other, and they started the investigation. And first they decided to take some of their property. Now I found out just today that they took literally 34 million or whatnot out of the United States and started companies outside the United States. And they're talking about, I don't know whether they're going to carry it out, but they're talking about confiscating some of that money to get some of it back. So we'll see what happens. Right now, that is not entirely closed. Now, the second big, well-known polygamist group is called the Apostolic United Brethren.
Okay.
The Apostolic United Brethren was
now, are these all in the same area?
Well,
Kingston and
the headquarters of both of them now are in Utah.
Okay, but I mean, in the same general areas, are
well,
they close by?
I really can't say that because the Apostolic United Brethren stretched out and got a big place in Pinesdale, Montana. They also have property down in Colorado City and Shore Creek and Bend.
So they're spread out.
Yeah, but the headquarters, I'm telling you the headquarters. The headquarters of the Kingston Group is in Salt Lake City. The headquarters of the Apostolic United Brethren is in a little town called Bluffdale, just east of Salt Lake City, okay?
Okay.
Now, the Apostolic United Brethren was led by Rulon Clark Allred. He was my uncle. So this is basically where I spent a lot of my childhood. This was my uncle. Now, the Apostolic United Brethren had about 500,000 members, but when I tell you that, it's interesting because when you start looking them up on the computer, their membership changes whenever it's convenient, depending on who wrote the article. So just flip a coin. We really don't know. Of course, my Uncle Rulon was assassinated by another cult member, Ervil LeBaron. Ervil LeBaron had him killed, and Ervil LeBaron is my brother-in-law's brother. So here we have another version of It's All in the Family.
Were there consequences for having him killed, or was he jailed or imprisoned, or how?
Eventually, Ervil killed about 28 people, and they finally got him and put him in jail.
Oh my goodness!
But
he got away with killing 28 people.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
He was a serial killer.
Put him in prison. Yes, they did. But anyway, the Apostolic United Brethren, led by my Uncle Rulon, who was murdered by Ervil LeBaron. After Uncle Rulon was murdered, my Uncle Owen took over the leadership of the AUB. And during Uncle Owen's leadership, the AUB and its priesthood members stole $154 million from Virginia Hill. Why do I know so much about this? Is because my brother was part of the AUB and told me all about it. My brother Richard, who is deceased now, was heavily involved in laundering the stolen money for the Apostolic United Brethren. After being found guilty of stealing Virginia's money, Uncle Owen convinced his congregation that Virginia gave him the money as tithing, and the whole thing was persecution and nothing else. The only thing is, Uncle Owen really screwed up. He had quite an imagination that he had to record all the priesthood meetings and stay in power, and he recorded this one. He recorded the entire theft and even the fact that he wasn't going to give back the stolen money. Unfortunately, his followers believed all the lies he said, that it was totally propaganda because they were polygamists, and they went to work to earn the money and pay it back. They had bake sales, they sold everything they could. So, in effect, Uncle Owen not only succeeded in stealing the money, not once, but twice.
Now, he was not caught in the process of stealing the money. Nobody spoke up.
Oh, nobody spoke up. They're all under oath. Remember the oath, okay? So then Uncle Owen made another big mistake in his recording. He reminded all of the priesthood men of the fact that women are never allowed to handle money. Now, my dear friends, you know that these women are all, except the legal wife, are all on welfare. Now you know that none of them can even handle their own welfare check. The men take them and do what they will with them.
Okay.
Now,
Well,
the law says polygamy is a choice. Isn't it interesting that if polygamy is a choice, that polygamous men don't have to pay for their own actions? Uncle Owen didn't, his health was bad and he didn't live too long after that. I don't recall him ever seeing any jail time. So that was the...
Well, you have a very interesting family history.
Unfortunately, I do. But all during the time that this was going on, I was aware of what was going on because my brother and Richard and I were very close friends. So I was basically right on top of it. The FLDS Church believes that all apostates, which are all you that don't believe the way they do, owe them. You owe a debt to God, and they're God's sacred people, and you owe them. So Uncle Rulon had breakaway fundamentalist groups in Utah, Colorado, Montana, Arizona, etc., in the USA, and that remained so. And he sent certain people up to be the prophets of each one of those groups.
What could possible viewers take away from this, and on some kind of form of action that they could take? What would you like people to know, and what they could do to turn this around? Because this is criminal activity, and people are concerned about crime and violence, but obviously stealing this kind of money from the federal government needs to be addressed. So what would you suggest that people can do to make a change?
We're just getting started. Now, just in case you doubt any of these things, this sounds like it's slipping off the subject a little bit, but it isn't. First, I want you to realize that the only wife that's legally married is one.
The first wife.
Or maybe the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
She's legally married. All of the rest of them are on welfare, and they're being supported with your tax dollars. Now, you're aware, all of you are aware, that Utah just decriminalized polygamy, so they can have it without ends. There's no serious consequence, no worse than a traffic ticket. However, here's the catch-22. Before Utah decriminalized polygamy, we the taxpayer, were paying literally millions of dollars every year to support illegitimate polygamous wives and children on welfare. Just that bill alone, okay, on welfare.
Okay.
Now, please check Anderson Cooper CNN on this so that you know that he's the one that put it on the air and this is factual. I want people to be able to trace what I'm saying because a lot of people think it's just way too far out and it just can't be so. But here's the catch-22. Now that polygamy is no longer illegal, we expect that millions that we used to pay to become an avalanche that gets bigger and bigger every year. Every year. Now,
as they keep having babies.
Yes, and they're commanded to have babies as often as possible. With the COVID virus, with the forest fire, and with the hurricanes, is polygamy really where America wants to spend their tax dollars?
No.
You have no idea.
I'm one taxpayer and I say no.
You have no idea how many millions of your dollars disappear every year for illegitimate families. The polygamists don't take responsibility for their families because they don't have to. They're not married. And do you ever watch Cody Brown on Sister Wives?
Oh, I heard of it, yes.
Okay, Cody Brown's married to two of my cousins. Now, here's the thing. A while back when he was doing real good, everybody had a house. When it came time for him to pay the taxes on those houses, He only paid the taxes on his legal wife's house, and he called a tax man and found out that he didn't have to pay anybody else's taxes because he wasn't legally married to him anyway, and there's no way they could stick him with the bill, and he did not pay it.
So it's no different between welfare and polygamous situations?
The only thing is there is a difference. It's minor, but it's not minor. One of them is done in the name of religion. The
Right.
people that are not religious and are just doing it because they want to aren't threatened and they can get away.
Oh, okay,
have
so
a
you're
choice.
talking about the
They
enslaved.
might not have a choice on who's going to pay their bills, but they have a choice on whether or not they're going to stay there. Polygamous women are denied that choice religiously. All
Okay,
right?
so they can't escape if they wanted to.
No, they can't.
Okay,
So, the thing is, if the government so many times has stood up and says, we can't do anything about polygamy, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. Well, it's too expensive because they try to make everybody pay for it. If they try to make everybody pay their own way that live polygamy, it wouldn't be expensive. It shouldn't be our bill. Why is it our bill? And I really believe this. It was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that decided to make polygamy just a misdemeanor, no responsibility involved. I think since they want polygamy so bad, they should be held legally responsible for the polygamy. They're wealthy enough. They're one of the wealthiest churches on earth. They could afford to pay for these children. They're the ones that taught it. And I think they should be responsible for polygamy. And as we march on through the other polygamous kings, the Kingston Group and the AUB group, and we march on down this circle that we're going through, you're going to find out that if the government stopped paying for these crimes, they would decrease.
okay.
And the answer is not to prosecute them, stop financing them. If the LDS Church had to finance this, polygamy would shrink.
Will actually change the vote, because I understand that the vote to legalize polygamy was not that long ago. So
That's
what
right.
you're talking about is to reverse that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. It seems that a lot of people voted for legalization. Is that correct?
Well, a lot of Mormons and FLDS Mormons voted for legalization because
Right, because taxpayers pay the bill.
the more wives they have that they don't take care of, the more money they make.
I'm just trying to figure out, as an outsider who does not live in the state of Utah,
Yeah.
what I can do to turn that around, because I couldn't agree with you more that this is pure craziness when a church is making lots of money, which they are,
Right.
and we're paying for the children that they have, and these women are enslaved, and to have babies every year. But what can I do about that? Because that is my.
I think the only thing that will really work is to make the public so aware of it, they're disgusted enough with it that they vote for a change and outvote them.
Would they vote for that outside of Utah? See, Utah's gotten to be such a polygamous state.
Well, that's how I think that Utah got it in. However, the thing is that let's get a little ridiculous here now. You'll probably start laughing, because the first time I ever went to a ball game and I heard them sing, the Star Spangled Banner with liberty and justice for all, I wondered where that United States was. I never heard of them before. Okay.
Yeah.
So point being, the American government, not just Utah, but the American government should absolutely refuse to pay for polygamy and force the Mormon Church to do it. If they want it, they ought to pay for it.
Telling your story, Rebecca, would probably be extremely helpful, because you inspire people that you had your own identity, you knew what you wanted to do, and you didn't want to stay in a cult, and you had children, 6 children, and you had to get yourself out, and you had to get the children out. So personally, I think that's the most fascinating story, because you were strong enough to be able to do that. You have an amazing story.
I'm going to tell you the little bit that I told you about the finances.
I'm sorry?
Is only the tip of the iceberg.